Right. Nice to see the numbers of people growing, and we've got some interesting information to share today, and I'm looking forward to getting started and doing the introductions. Uh, Maybe we should get rolling, Fuki, and
All
we'll
right,
let
let's go.
as we go.
Yep, sure.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Understanding Jira Governance in the Cloud webinar. We appreciate your coming today and spending some time with us. We have a short session today. This is a topic that could take an entire day, a full workshop, but we're going to really try and share not just the high level kind of understanding of what it is, but really give you some things you can take with you and implement yourselves as a starting place. And just to check where you are in your governance journey. So we're excited to have you today. So let me do some quick introductions. First, who we are. We're Service Rocket. We've been in this business for over 20 years. We've been excited to grow alongside Atlassian. Our companies were founded around the same time in Sydney, Australia. I think we bought the first version of Confluence well before it was called Confluence. But the truth here is that we've actually learned a lot helping customers get the most out of their investments in Atlassian. And this is just what we've done for the last 20 years and a lot of the expertise we've developed. And we've been recognized for that, recognized by Atlassian as a Platinum Solution Partner. We've earned specializations where it counts in cloud and ITSM. And also we're applying some of the industry's best practices to make sure that our customers understand that we take their business seriously. And we make sure that we have all the security in place to make sure that we are respecting your business and what you're trying to do as organizations as well. On top of that, as I mentioned before, we've been able to grow alongside Atlassian. We've got 10 locations around the world. That means we're able to support you any time of the day, anywhere you are. We've got over 250 Rocketeers globally, 50 and growing Atlassian certified Rocketeers with 11 ACE experts. As I mentioned before, that 24-hour support following the sun, and over 4,000 active customers demonstrate the fact that we know what we're doing and customers love working with us. So, quick introduction. I'm Peter Marquez. I'm Chief Customer Officer at Service Rocket, and I'm really excited to be with you here today. And I have one of my favorite Rocketeers, Fuki Sim, is joining us today. He's the Manager of Solution Architecture. He's based out of London. I'm in Boston, in the US. And we're excited to chat with you today and share some things you can take home around governance in Jira and explore the idea in a broader sense. So our agenda today is a quick intro into this broad idea of governance for Jira, and then looking very specifically at Jira in the cloud and what is actually happening there as companies move to the cloud. We'll look at security, efficiency, compliance, those things that are really important. The guts of all governance is really around the policies and processes and tools used to implement that. And then just how you can actually grow your skills in that area. Then we'll leave some time for questions and answers and go from there. Excellent. So let's do this intro to governance. First thing we want to do is basically just take a quick poll today for the folks here. Want to know, who are you representing today? Are you representing a DevOps organization, really sort of focused on developing applications? Are you part of an IT service management organization where you're representing IT and how they serve their organization? Are you involved in some type of enterprise service management work, which is basically maybe HR or legal, some other organization that's delivering services to your company? Or are you really focused on broader work management? How non-IT teams are actually using Jira to implement work management. So let's take a quick vote here.
All right, keep the answers coming. So most of you are in IT service management.
All right, fantastic. We know who we're talking to today, IT Service Management. Thank you for being here. Um, Appreciate that. So we can sort of tune our conversation to focus on that. So what is governance? At a high level, governance is really a set of structures and processes and policies that you use and apply to software within an organization to make sure that you can deliver business value, you can mitigate risk, and really support the delivery of efficient operations. And that's it at a high level. How can we get those efficient operations with the least amount of risk, creating the biggest amount of business value? And that's governance in a nutshell. Governance for Jira actually is a lot of different things. We've sort of identified 5 elements here. There are a lot to cover, but I'm just going to introduce them very quickly. There's identity and access management, kind of the starting place, who gets access to what we're doing. The next one is workflow and project management. And this is really the heart of governance. This is where you can create the most efficiency and really have the biggest effect and reduce a lot of risk. Talking about risk, data security, and compliance, we all work in companies where there are processes in place to make sure we're complying with the regulations that manage our business or the industries that we're in. So it's very important we have that capability implemented within our Jira systems. Monitoring and reporting, you can't improve what you can't measure. And so a big part of growing and improving is understanding what you're doing and being able to report that back. And then finally, there's change management. And this is one of those key things that people sometimes forget to focus on, but we actually work with other human beings. And there are 2 things happening. One, we have to aid them as they grow and change. And then secondly, we have to put in policies and procedures to make sure that we actually understand the changes that are happening, that they're trackable, and that we don't break things, but we enhance and optimize things through change. So those are the 5 elements of governance for Jira. We're going to touch on a few of these different areas in the examples that Fugi's going to walk you through. And some of these things are interrelated, but I wanted to lay this out as an overview. Next quick note is really where you are in your governance journey. Each one of you have an understanding of what your company is and where it's going. But let's take a look at this maturity model because it's pretty important, particularly for Jira, because many companies start with Jira bottom up. A team adopts it and they just solve a problem with it. And they get to this level 1, this initial, very, very quickly. But almost immediately, they need to get to this repeatable place because you want to have some basic controls, like, as we mentioned before, user access management, some basic workflows that keep things kind of in check without them totally becoming sprawled and uncontrollable. The next level is where the real meat happens, and this is where you get your policies and procedures defined. You understand the way you want to use the product, and now you're about implementing that and making sure there's ways of enforcing that within your organization. And a lot of that has to do with automation. Manage is that next stepping stone where, as I mentioned before, not only have you defined what you wanted, but you're also monitoring it, reporting on it, and making improvements so you can actually get to that managed level and address issues in a proactive fashion. Then finally, the last level is optimized. And that's that continuous improvement focus. It's a lot of automation, a lot of analytics. You're optimizing workflows, you're improving data quality all the time, and you're moving in this direction. All of this is basically moving from this, cost-driven, hey, let's solve a problem kind of mindset to this value-driven mindset. And on a business case, you're going from very short term, let's solve this initial problem, to the long term, how do we build a great organization? So just a quick survey here. Where are you guys? What's your thought about where your organization is when it comes to this maturity level? I understand that no one's one thing because some areas may be multiple, but pick one and let's see where we land. What are we seeing, Fugi?
All right. Most are at repeatable and then followed by define. And then some are at manage and one is on initial.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it's great. Super. It's good to have a sense of where you are. There's no bad answers. This is all about how do we get to the next level. So great. Super. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So now that we have the foundation, I'm going to turn it over to Fugi, who has all the experience in actually delivering these, seeing people who are at that initial phase and how they moved up, to managed and defined, maybe even optimized. So Fugi, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Peter, for that wonderful introduction to governance to set the stage for what we're going to present today in terms of actual Jira governance, the technical stuff. So let's get started and let's go to the first poll. Are you currently on cloud? So let me launch this poll. Are you currently on cloud or planning to move or considering moving to cloud? All right, most of you are on cloud already. One is planning to move to cloud. All right, let us know if we can help you on that front. It can be quite daunting, too many tasks to worry about, too many decisions, blockers that you have to deal with. We have the experience from Service Rocket side. We've done a lot of a lot of really critical migrations, including consolidations as well. And then there's one considering moving to cloud. I would say it's the right move. And as we go along through the slides, you will see that there's actually a lot of benefits to moving to cloud. Okay, so let me share the results so that you can all see. Thank you for participating. Okay. All right, so let me go back. So you've migrated to cloud. A lot of you have. So you look around and there seems to be a lot of difference in how it looks and its features compared to your old data center instance. The UI is definitely cleaner, right? Right now that you can see it's fresher, it's more user-friendly, and your admin team now has a bit more time on their hands, not having to deal with upgrades, performance issues. We will get into the discussion about whether they actually have more time shortly. So gone are the old ways of working. Remember those painful upgrades in weekends? I talked to one customer recently and they told me, the Jira admin told me that he has never had a weekend free so far because in their organization, they have 17 Jira DC instances. So he has to work on upgrades almost literally every weekend for the entire year. So moving to cloud is going to get rid of a lot of this. So now you essentially have more money from not having to manage an on-premise infrastructure, more time from not having to deal with DC-related issues, the upgrade security patching that I mentioned. Speaking of security patching, there's a new security bulletin that was published as well. So make sure you check that out from Atlassian. And if you have questions on any security concerns, do let us know. We do have a strong security solution architect team in Service Rocket. Now, you also have more control from a more streamlined architecture, and we'll discuss this more in detail during governance. So I'm sure there's a lot more advantages that you can think about. Now, does that mean that your IT staff are now freer now that you've moved to cloud? So another poll right now. For all of you Jira admins out there, I'm sure there's a few amongst you. Do you actually have more time since moving to cloud right now? Okay, so let's keep the answers coming. Oh, cool. Interesting. Okay, the majority says it's the same, and then followed by more time. So 5 of you said you have more time. 6 of you said you feel that you still have about the same time. Yeah, I mean, unless we go into the philosophical question, right? Time is always the same. It's just how free you are, right? So, all right, 7 of you, the same, 5 more time. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on. So it's important first to know what governance is and why you need to implement it in your organization. Peter touched on this already earlier. In terms of what it does for Jira, especially, it refers to the policies, processes, and tools. We will go through each of these in detail later. The main goal is we want to have Jira be as secure, efficient, and compliant as possible. Okay, so let's start with identity and access management security. So when you're doing IAM, the first thing that comes to mind is actually security, but it also touches on efficiency and compliance as well, in terms of governance. Now, let's look at this example. Anyone can spot what's the problem here. Do put that in the chat if you. What's the problem with this permission scheme?
Come on, there are no bad answers.
No bad answers. I won't bite.
We have a shy group.
Okay, no problem. I can see some answers. Chat disabled. Okay, any logged-in user can administer projects. Oh, James, amazing. Good one, good one. That's correct. There's another problem here. Chat is disabled. So yeah, feel free to put into the Q&A. All right, so that's in terms of security, right? The fact that any logged-in user can administer projects, but there's also in terms of efficiency as well. You can see browse projects is given to single user. And if, let's say, more users want to actually access this project, then you need to configure the permission scheme. And that's you will need to also consider that this permission scheme may be shared with multiple projects. So that could be a problem. So efficiency is also part of governance. We want to make sure that your admins do not have to deal with too much workload. Having this kind of workload can affect the rest of the items like security and compliance, because that's when they then start assigning Jira admin rights to 50+ users. So in terms of workflow and project management, you can see here an example is this set of custom fields. I know a lot of you have this kind of similar situation in your environment. Imagine if you're trying to write a JQL system is not empty. You're asked which system field you're referring to. Is this one of these 4? Very difficult to know because they have exactly the same name, exactly the same type. Each of them have one context. Presumably, this is like for one project, this one is for another project. So one way that you can do a quick win in terms of governance is you can consolidate these system fields together so that they are just one system field with 3 different contexts, for example, because some of the projects can actually share the same context. Now, I will go into a more cool way how you can prevent these kind of issues in your instance in the next slide. Not the next slide, sorry. It's the slide after this. But anyway, so the components of governance include policies and processes, and these usually go hand in hand. While policies lay out the rules, processes lay out the how to accomplish the task according to the policies. And this is why usually policies and processes live within the same Confluence space. If you're trying to design a governance space for your policies and processes in your organization, I highly recommend grouping them together because they usually go hand in hand and you should link them together as well. So at the very minimum, your policies should include the when and why, which is the scope and purpose, the who are the roles and responsibilities, and the what, which are the statements that define the policies. Let's take a look at an example to see what I mean. So an example here is a access management policy. And this one has the roles and responsibilities here. You can see the governance team, the IT team, the platform engineering team, including their responsibilities. And then you have the statements. So the statements here could be like all systems should be access controlled with a default deny all. And for Jira, you can have a policy where everyone should inherit only a Jira user permission if they need access to Jira, and should they need, let's say, for example, to modify workflows, those kind of stuff, then only then you have considerations for elevated privileges like Jira admin or project admins. So yeah, so this policy was set up like some basic rules so that when there is, like there are some doubts on whether a person should gain like more rights to Jira, or should they be even given their own custom fields, their own screens that they are requesting for, you can actually refer to these statements for an easy way to find out whether what you're doing is within your policy. Another policy, another governance module that Peter mentioned earlier, which includes we already discussed IAM and WPM, which is identity access management and workflow project management. One thing that we should discuss is also change management. This is a quick way for you to maintain governance throughout Jira. And an example here is if, let's say, this is one of my customers. So one of my customers, they have a policy where if you're trying to create a new custom field, you need to go through the custom field dictionary so that you first look for an existing custom field with almost similar name or the same name, and you can then use that in your project. Now, if you don't see those, the reason why we're doing this is we want to avoid users, creating their own custom fields, and then Jira admins just creating it on their behalf, to the point that you now have like a few hundred custom fields. This will affect efficiency and also potentially some compliance related issues in the future. So if none of the custom fields fit their need, this is where this change management process comes in, where we first identify the goals and purpose of the additional fields or the screens that you're asking for. And then we properly document and stage the creation of that field and screens to make sure no other projects are affected, and that the risk of introducing the field is minimal because it will not affect other configurations. The documentation requirement here, once you go through all of these steps, you will end up with a set of documentation that will list out the reasons why that field was introduced, why this workflow was modified. And this, you stage it well, and once you get all the approvals, you can then move it to production. By having this, if you have any issues in the future, it's easy to then audit and go back. And as an example, I've implemented something for one of my customers like 2 years ago. And then recently, like just a few months ago, they asked me to make some changes to it. And it was very easy to find out what I did, what was my reasoning behind it, because we've documented the change management documents really well.
Hey, Fugi, in the case of that customer, and then in general policies like this, where are they stored? Like how do people get access? What's the typical method?
Usually we store it in Confluence, unless you have any other tool. Confluence is the best place. And also one thing to note about Confluence, especially with the new recent Atlassian features, is the fact that we now have Atlassian intelligence. So it's now easier than ever. Imagine if you have a few hundred policy documents, right? It's easier for your users to now query Atlassian intelligence to find out which policy they are referring to when they're trying to create a new configuration.
Very cool.
Yeah. If you miss the Atlassian intelligence, the demos and stuff, do look at you can find it on YouTube, but at the same time, you can also check out some of our other webinars as well that is coming your way. All right, I know a lot of you are waiting with bated breath. You're thinking about how can I know policies and processes are cool and stuff, but their documentation, right? And us Jira admins, especially, or consultants, we want to see the tooling, right? How do you do this, right? One example I can show you is through, for example, apps like Secure Notes by Service Rocket. Now, this app handles security. Sometimes your Jira service management agents need to provide temporary passwords. For example, somebody is requesting for a password reset on your JSM portal. The old way of doing it is you might send the temporary password through email, right? Which is very insecure because it's in plain text. You might also send it through Jira's, comment field, which is also plain text. What Secure Notes does is it allows you to then put the password into a secure note, which is encrypted end to end. So only the viewer of this issue can actually see it. And you can specify which exact users can see it. Yeah, talk to us if you want to find out more. All right, the other thing about tooling that I need to talk about is regarding scheme remapping. The goal of scheme remapping is to reduce the footprint of schemes that are very difficult to understand, and also so it's in terms of efficiency and also in terms of compliance as well. I will talk a little bit on compliance shortly. But anyway, so you can see here an example. You have 4 schemes. This is a very basic example. I'm sure in your situation, it will be much more complicated than this. A simple example, 4 schemes. Most of them, if you notice, these 3 schemes have the exact same issue types, whereas this one have different issue types. And then you may see that your users have, like, project A is mapped to scheme A, project B is to agile issue type scheme, etc. A simple way to fix this is you just map project A, B, C to the first scheme and then get rid of the other schemes. Now, immediately you can feel like, oh, you know what? It's not usually as straightforward as this, but this is the first low-hanging fruit that you will find in your instance. I guarantee you go back to your instance after this webinar, look at your issue type schemes, you'll find that at least a few hundred of them, if you have a really huge instance, a few hundred of them probably have the exact same issue types.
All right, guys, when you go back, do that. And if it's not the case, send Fugi a note and correct him. But you're going to find these. So let's prove him right or prove him wrong.
Yep. Yeah, and the reason for that is the way Jira approached it in the past is whenever you create a new project, it creates a new issue type scheme for you for that particular project. When in fact, you should actually be sharing a lot of them. Now, there's a lot of discussion about scheme remapping and whether it's actually beneficial. There's debates on that because, like, for example, if you want to introduce a new issue type, wouldn't that affect more than one project? Now, this is where that debate gets interesting, and I will go into the more, like, you can call it like almost like Jira philosophy in a way, where if all of your projects are speaking the same language, there's a lot of efficiency to be had in that area because your users will understand the same nomenclature. Let's go through that as we go along. I will discuss that with more points. But anyway, keep that thought and challenge me in the Q&A if you disagree with that, okay? So usually it's not as straightforward as this. There will be some issue types that are different between schemes. And yeah, sometimes the different schemes will have some differences, but that doesn't mean that they cannot be remapped. And this is just issue types. You can also think about the same thing for field configuration, for screen schemes, etc. So it's good to gather the stakeholders and have a session to align everyone together before consolidating on a common nomenclature. And you can trust me on this. You will find that even the most passionate stakeholder usually can be persuaded to follow a different nomenclature than what they're used to, as long as we listen empathetically to their requirements. We restate their opinions and present a strong case for a consolidated future state. And this is a trick in terms of consulting. Never go into the technical details. I know a lot of us are Jira admins here. The first temptation we do when people ask for different things on our Jira instance is we go into the technical explanation. Oh, you can't do this because this extra custom field is going to introduce performance issues to Jira. Usually the stakeholders don't really feel that that's their main goal. Their main goal is not to make sure Jira's scalability is there. Their main goal is to achieve their business requirements. So what you can do is understand their business requirement empathetically before you go into the technical details. So now, before you debate me in the Q&A on what I mentioned earlier, so let me explain my point about remapping schemes. So remapping schemes usually results in less admin overhead because whenever somebody requests something, you're quite familiar with the limited schemes that you have in the system. For example, if your instance only have 2 issue type schemes, somebody asks for something, you immediately know at the back of your head what they mean by that, because all of the issue types across Jira is standardized. And this is an active project we're working with our customers as well, where we map all of their few hundred projects into a common 3 templates of schemes, which is really cool. And you will find that once you rediscover the whys, this is the next part about remapping scheme, is you need to rediscover the why certain things was added in the first place. By rediscovering the why, you would find that a lot of these configurations are added because somebody felt that it looks better. Let me just add it in. Let me create that custom field because it sounds cooler, right? Or let me create that status because it makes sense in this project, although in progress really covers it as well, right? So yeah, if it was requested, I just add it in. It's a very bad way of handling this. And then finally, in terms of ease of use, an instance filled with projects with common schemes also makes it easy for users to be familiar with the nomenclature and process while raising and working with issues. Imagine an instance where all statuses are standardized rather than one project using in progress, the other one using processing, for example. Then when you're trying to, if you're talking about advanced roadmaps, where you're trying to pull different projects into the same advanced roadmaps plan, if they are all using different nomenclature, it's going to be very confusing. That plan will look very weird.
Hey, Fugi, when you consolidate those schemes, do you find that the schemes tend to get bigger? Are they sprawling? Or is there a lot of overlap, but they're just different, using different terms?
Yeah, there's usually a lot of overlap. Their terms are usually very unique to that specific project. For example, we've seen like people will create, for example, SOC review issue type, right? When they are actually an actual task. So once we map it to task, initially, the stakeholder are upset about it. Hey, why did you map that? It doesn't make sense. But once they start using tasks, they realize actually it's the same thing. You can just use an additional custom field, for example, to specify that this is a SOC review, for example, within that task, the type of task, so to say. And then that's when you realize that you can actually control the sprawl.
Well, maybe there's more tips and tricks that'll come up in the Q&A around that, but I think it's a really interesting point.
Yep. Cool, thank you. So what other schemes or configurations can we remap? That's something that you can have a food for thought. Think about it. Think about your instance. Like, what is the main pain point? You can also put it in the Q&A. What is the main scheme that like immediately pops into your head? Oh, this is a problem in my Jira instance right now. I'm going to do that as soon as I go back. Anyone has any suggestion that they want to put in the Q&A? Oh, priority scheme. Interesting. Yeah. You know, one of the major pain points that some people have is when they have multiple DC instances and they used to have different priority schemes. And then they migrate into cloud and they now have to talk the same language. They have to agree to a common priority scheme, right? This is a fun topic for us to work with our customers. Usually it involves a lot of stakeholder wrangling, getting them to agree and align. Cool, thank you. Thanks for that, Giorgio. All right, the next one I'm going to talk about is very important. It's called footprint reduction. Now, the first thing that you imagine from footprint reduction is that it will touch on efficiency only, but actually it also touches on compliance. So there's a few features that you need to make use of in Jira. So for example, archiving projects and archiving issues. One thing that I need to take note of is the fact that archiving projects and issues do not delete them. It simply removes them from indexing, so makes indexing faster. At the same time, if you have regulatory requirements for to make sure you don't have stale data or outdated data, then you may have to remove them. For example, we have customers that say they cannot maintain data past a certain year, for example. So you can do that. It will reduce your footprint, makes indexing faster, makes searching faster as well when you're talking about cloud. Because ultimately, if you have a few 100,000 issues, let's say, or 1 million issues in your Jira instance, if you can archive them and cut down on the number, it's going to make your searches much faster. Oh, I see another point there. On our end, the priority schemes have been consolidated during the cloud migration. Oh, thanks, Jojo, for that. Yep, that's very good. That's a good point. Yeah. Disabling inactive users is going to help you in terms of licensing costs, right? And also it makes it easy for your users to mention other users as well. So imagine if you're trying to put add mention or trying to assign an issue to another person, having to deal with a very long list of suggestions is going to be less effective. And the other thing about app configuration, script runner listeners, I know we're in the topic of cloud, so listeners may not be that relevant, but if you are still on DC, one thing about listeners is every time there's an event that's fired in Jira, regardless of whatever event that is, even though your listeners is only listening to, let's say, issue updated event, the way script runner listeners is built, any events at all, even if it's issue resolved, it will trigger that listener. It doesn't trigger it in a way that causes it to run, but that listener will need to be consulted first before before the rest of the functionality in Jira resumes. So that's something that will hit your performance quite a bit. So be careful with script runner listeners. I would say, yeah, cut them down and move them to post functions, for example. And as much as possible, use standard automation in Jira, because standard automation in Jira can now do a lot of what script runner can do. All right. The other one is X-ray test executions and test cases. I know some of you may use that. So there is a concern with 50 gigabytes limit on X-ray standard. If you have test executions that are left hanging around for a long time already, after you've completed that particular release, you may still have the test cases hanging around with screenshots on how to perform the test. That can add up, and once you hit the 50 gigabytes limit, you cannot upload additional attachments anymore unless you upgrade to X-ray Enterprise. Okay, and the other one is workflow post functions, JMWE, JSU, script runner. They can be a hit to performance even if you're on cloud. Imagine if every time you are moving one status to another, this triggers 6 post function calls, for example, 6 scripts on JSU or script runner. It's going to add up. So those are the kind of things that you should look to reduce. I know I will not go into how you can reduce them because that's something that is super technical. If you want to know more and you want our help as well, we also have consulting and implementation support from Service Rocket. We can help you get that. And then in terms of automation rules, just be aware that there's an execution limit for global rules and the project rules as well that's coming. I don't know whether it's already here. So you have an execution limit. One thing that you can do with this is in terms of footprint reduction, you may argue that some of these rules, you really need them. What you can do is you can actually combine them into a single rule by using branch rules, for example. The other thing is a lot of times when I audit my customers, when they ask me to help them with footprint reduction, I find that there's a lot of automation rules that is just sitting there. It's triggered but it doesn't perform any action. So those are quick win, just get rid of them. You're going to achieve better efficiency, compliance as well, because you may accidentally trigger a wrong execution on the wrong issue types. So just be aware of that. So compliance can be affected if you have automation rules that are lying around. So why reduce footprint? I mentioned this already. Indexing performance, easier to find what you're looking for, keeps data fresh. So if you're searching for issues in JQL, they're not having to sift through a lot of irrelevant data. And then also reduce billing, I mentioned with automation rules. Ultimately, you can see governance is not easy. And we've only touched on very few of the governance modules. I only touch on IAM, WPM, and change management. There's a lot more. And if you find this daunting, talk to us. We can offer either training or consulting or solutions architecture advisory. And ultimately, we need your administrators to treat governance almost like you cannot expect them to memorize all the rules, all the policies, right? But we want them to have like a sixth sense to be able to sense when a particular configuration requirement or a request sounds a bit odd. Almost to the fact that when, if you're a musician, if somebody plays a C major scale and plays an F sharp in there, it will sound quite odd that they would detect it immediately. Oh, that's an out of tune note. Unless, of course, you're playing in jazz, jazz F sharp is actually a very nice note. It becomes mixolydian bebop. Okay, we have a question from George, a question about the archive issues. In our company, they use older issues to find context of historical. Is this still possible? Yes. You can unarchive issues, and you can search through the issue archive as well if you have the search view issue archive permission. Okay, correct me on that. I think it's called a view archive permission in the project permission. So the answer is yes, you can still search through if you have that permission. Okay, we're not playing jazz with Atlassian products. You cannot have that weird note in there. We are full classical players here, okay? Stick to the C major scale. And okay, so in order to achieve that ability to detect that wrong note, all your admins, even your project admins, should go through some key trainings, such as the ones highlighted here. This will help them understand the key concepts and best practice, and it will help them with the overall governance of the system. Projects will be set up correctly, and your project admins will not be annoying you with a lot of requests for access. Hey, I need to change this workflow. Once they understand how they can work with governance, I think it's going to be really, really helpful for them as well. And then Jira and Confluence will be used to its full potential. One thing about Confluence I need to mention here is sometimes I see pages when I audit my customers' instances. I see pages that are built like so statically that they have to update it to keep it fresh. You can use a lot of macros to make it dynamic. So that's part of information architecture best practices. And if you're interested to know more about that, there's an information architecture webinar that you can search on YouTube that is delivered by Service Rocket.
Cool. Hey, Fugi.
And also, yeah. Yes, Peter.
Finish it up.
Oh, yeah, and talk to Service Rocket if you want to find out more about the trainings that we can deliver, because we are an Atlassian training provider.
Absolutely. I was going to mention that we offer several of these administration classes for free to our customers. So if you are a customer of ours, a licensed customer, service customer, one of the benefits. So just a note for you to, another way for you to get that training. We also offer it in public classes as well.
Oh, thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
So where do you need to go, and how quickly do you need to get there?
Yeah, that's the big question. We did the whole maturity model earlier. You saw these 5 phases. Many of you said that you were in that repeatable, defined area and have eyes on getting to manage and optimize. And so the question is, how quickly do you need to get there? As Boogie said, there's work that you can do. There's tips and tricks you can find online. You can look at some of our webinars. You can go to training. And there's also, Fugi mentioned, we have solution architects as well who their job is to sit down and provide advisory services to help create a roadmap to define where you are today, get your current state, and then figure out how do you get to the next level? What are the critical steps that you need to take to get there? And so we're happy to help with that kind of work as well. Much of this work, there are things that you can do yourself. Going back to Fugi's point about how much time you have and how much time is available, and we can help you understand how to do that. And there's some projects that are larger, or you have other things you're working that are very important to the business. And so we can help in either fashion. But the key is having a map, and we're happy to help you develop that map and get a sense of how you get to manage and optimize.
Cool.
So part of that is we're interested in perhaps doing a workshop, a more in-depth workshop. We just took about an hour of time chatting with you here today, and we're going to do a Q&A after this. But we're considering doing a workshop. And we're just wondering, for those of you that are in the London area, would you participate in a half-day workshop in London? Would that be interesting? Or would you do the same if it was outside the city? Or is a workshop not all that interesting? You think you'd rather approach your problems in a different fashion? We're just trying to understand what the interest is there. So let us know if you would take a moment just to answer that poll question there and give us a sense of whether you think those might be worthwhile.
All right, keep it coming. Oh, it seems a majority of you are outside of London.
Yes, we were looking for evidence of that. We've done some events in London. We'd like to do some stuff outside. Obviously, outside of London is large. There's north, south, east, and west to consider. But maybe we'll send you guys a follow-up and ask and just get a sense of where you're located, because we'd like to spend more time with the Atlassian community, and especially those people outside of London. Excellent. All right, so we shared a lot of information with you. Now we have time to sort of go a little bit deeper. If you guys have some pressing questions or things you disagreed with, Fugi shared a lot of technical knowledge, also some soft skills as well around, the people skills required to make this happen. I was very intrigued with just this idea of how you manage stakeholders and how you get them to be less reactive to your suggestions. So that was interesting. Definitely talked a bit about how schemes, when you consolidate them, don't have to sprawl into very larger schemes, and that's an interesting takeaway as well. But let's see if there are any other questions in the Q&A for Fugi, either to stump him or that we can help with. I know it takes time to type. Fugi, what's the first thing you do when you sit down with a new customer, and after you've done all your introductions, what's the first thing you do on your journey to help them understand how they can improve their governance?
First, I identify their so what I always mention is I want to understand their organization to the point that I know their organization potentially better than they know it themselves. That's what I usually tell my customers at the start. By understanding the organization, their business goals, then you can then fit it with the tools. Never start with the tools first. I think the common mistake is we're very tempted to start with tool-based approach. So we come in, we understand like a very basic current state, what are the tools that you're using, what are the pain points, and then immediately go into like actual design and build solution.
Sure.
Instead, understanding the business goals, their organization, how it's structured, you can then figure out like a lot of more infrastructure-based kind of answers.
Most of the folks in this call are from ITSM. They're working with IT service management. And can you think of a few examples of companies that have gone on this maturity journey for ITSM, improved their governance to the level of optimization? What kind of benefits are they seeing? Like, can you point to some real benefits that companies are seeing from this process?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So I think with ITSM, usually they would see a significant improvement in terms of how they work with other departments, especially in the terms of ESM. If you're interested in ESM, we also delivered to all of you participants, by the way, if you're interested in ESM, we delivered a set of high velocity ITSM breakout presentation that you can see. I think it's recorded. But anyway, so in terms of ESM, by having them speak the common language between the different teams through governance, it actually helps to make sure that all of the work flows seamlessly across different teams. The other one that it does is, because there's not too much sprawl on request types, etc., your service desk agents dealing with a limited set of requests, for example. They're not working on a very different types of issue types, very different types of request types that can be quite confusing.
That gets to the question I had. My follow-up question was, particularly for ITSM, many people look at your response rates, your performance of your team. They look at that data, that reporting, that monitoring there, and they measure success based on, are we handling the issues? Are we doing it promptly? Are people getting the information they need, right? And all of that. And so connecting the dots between that and making investments in governance, like, can governance improve your performance?
Yep, most definitely. Yeah. I mean, if the service desk agents are speaking different languages between different issues, it's gonna, like, for example, one very common example is I've seen issue types where they have 15, 16 different statuses, right? Before it even can get to resolution, the agents will have to click so many times through different statuses, when actually a lot of these statuses can be simplified. And then that results in better mean time to resolve. And yeah, or in Atlassian terms, we call it time to resolution.
Super.
So there's a direct metric relation as well. The other thing is also on issue deflection. If you have a Confluence, and this also touches on Confluence when it comes to ITSM, if you have Confluence that is well organized, you don't have pages that are unstructured or just filled with stale data, it's going to help you in terms of issue deflection as well. When your users come in and ask about, hey, how many leaves do I have? And I have a very cool demo where Atlassian Intelligence helps on that front with Slack. So your users will be like, hey, how many leaves do I have currently, right? And then it can go through and scan that Confluence page and immediately say, hey, you have 25 days of leave, in your region, for example. Issue deflected. Yeah, no HR request created in the first place.
So governance has a lot of benefits, not just in compliance but also in the efficiency of the organization as well. And so we get back to the whole role of governance, which is all about, how do we make sure that we reduce risk, that we actually are improving our productivity, at the same time. So super. Well, this has been really fun and interesting. Thank you, Fugi, and thank you everyone for joining us. Feel free to reach out to us, either Fugi or me. I have a very easy email address at Service Rocket. It's just pj at Service Rocket. If you want to reach out to us, feel free to do that. And again, if there's any last questions here, feel free to pop them into the Q&A. Otherwise, we really appreciate spending time with you, and thank you so much for answering our polls and being so interactive with us and sharing your knowledge and sharing your concerns. So we deeply appreciate that. Any closing remarks, Fugi?
Nope. I think you covered it well, but yeah, really happy to be with all of you. Thank you for all of your attention, and thank you for all of the questions, submitting the poll, and for spending your afternoon with us. That's really much appreciated.
Thank you. We'll send a follow-up email just that will have one more poll in it just to say, hey, did we do a good job? Was this worthwhile? Did you guys get anything out of it? Please share that with us, respond to that, and we appreciate your time. So thank you all so very, very much.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Fugi.